Well, hey, North Park Community Church. Pastor Luke here with another episode of First Looks, and we are actually at the beginning of a new series. And so we have just recently wrapped up our Hebrews study, where we've been for a couple months, and now we are going to do a vision series. And this first part that's going to introduce the series in this first message is it's over Matthew 13, and it's going to be 24 and following, and it is the parable of weeds and wheat. All right, so that's what we got going on here. The purpose of choosing this passage to kick off our vision series is because our vision is to connect the community of our church, our homes, and our neighborhoods to Christ. That's what we want to do. We want to make sure that our allegiance to Christ, our service to Christ, is something that takes root, yes, amongst our local congregation of North Park, in which we serve one another and care for one another and love one another, bear one another's burdens, all those many great one another statements in the New Testament. And so we must be about the business of connecting one another to Christ and connecting one another into a deeper, more faithful relationship with Jesus. This is discipleship. And then we want to say that we also want to make sure that we are faithfully organizing, structuring, and deploying our homes to be little microcosms of what the church is. Little outposts of the kingdom, so to speak, as the Puritans like to say. And so we want to make sure that we are thinking about, as North Park Community Church, how we can equip and leverage and utilize our homes to be both centers of formation, but also outposts, missional outposts of evangelism. And so that'll be what ends up being our third week. And then our final week will be talking about how we are a light to the world around us that is in darkness. And so we are called to take the light and the hope of the gospel to our neighbors. And by that, that's just a general way of saying to those around us that need to know about Jesus. And so I say all that to say that this first introductory message is going to be, it's kind of on the topic of considering the situation at hand in which we find ourselves, where there is a broken world that we know about, and we also know that Jesus has come and he has inaugurated his kingdom. And both of those realities are at work, and both of those realities are critical for us to be cognizant of, to understand our very purpose for existence, and even more so, it's going to frame up the way in which we talk about how we function as a church, how we function as in our homes, and how we engage with the world around us. So that's what we're after. All right, that's enough talking. Let's dive on into the text here and start looking at it. Okay, we're just gonna kind of walk through this first part because Jesus will share his parable, and then later on his disciples will ask him to explain it, and he explains what he means with this parable. And so this parable, it's important to remember that this passage, this genre, is a parable with allegorical literary devices. Okay, so allegorical meaning that there is a story that is a very normal story, but has spiritual implications within it. Not even just implications, it just a direct symbolism that's happening here, in which the physical story itself is communicating very spiritual things. So this would be, something akin to C.S. Lewis talking about a lion in Narnia that is an allegorical representation of Christ. And so that's how the parables serve. And so he, right there, we can just go ahead and say Jesus, put another parable. There we go. That's how we know what's going on right here. This is a parable, this right there. Before them, this right here, before them is going to be his disciples plus the crowd. There's a larger crowd that was following Jesus here, and so he gives the initial parable to everybody. And here's what he says. The kingdom, absolutely critical here. Right there. The kingdom is the subject of many / most, if not all, in some way, of Jesus's parables. And we would say look at the rest of the parables in chapter 13, and you'll see that to be very clear. Okay, and we're going to come back to the topic of kingdom in just a moment here. The kingdom of heaven, okay, I want to make this connection real clear, that the kingdom of heaven, and again, I'm going to come back to this in a moment as to why I'm emphasizing this so much. Kingdom of heaven may be compared, it's something like this, to a man. As this man, he sowed good seed in his field, but while his men were sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared also. And the servants of the master of the house came and said to him, Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have weeds? He said to them, An enemy has done this. So the servant said to him, Then do you want us to go out and gather them? But he said, No, lest in gathering the weeds, you root up the wheat along with them. Let both grow up together until the harvest. And at the harvest time I will tell the reapers, Gather the weeds first, bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn. All right, so there's the story for us. Let's make note of a couple things here. I'm going to go with another color. Good. Okay, so we have a man. We have his men. We have his enemy. All right. And we have his field, okay? These are all important. Oh, and he has good seed right there. Okay. So those are going to be interpreted by Jesus. One of the things that I want us to take note of here is that you have good seed in his field, and you have wheat, and you have weeds, okay? Now, what's important for us to understand that's not common knowledge and not readily visible in the text here is that this word right here for weeds, and I'm going to take it on out here. is this Greek word is it's actually telling us that this is darnel, which was a poisonous crop. I shouldn't say crop. That's it's a poisonous plant that looks like wheat until the grain heads emerge. Okay. So why this is important is because when the weeds, this darnel, would be scattered amongst the wheat seeds, at first you wouldn't be able to tell the difference, what had happened. It would look like it was all wheat and that it was a fine, normal crop that was coming up. And it wouldn't be until later, when we could say the fruit is starting to evidence itself with the grain heads on the grain, that you would be able to see that that there was darnel that was scattered amongst your field. By that point, they've grown up enough that the roots would have been intertwined, and so that's where we have the master of the house saying down here. In response, no less than gathering the weeds, you root up the wheat along with them. Okay, so just an observation for us is that it is not always readily visible which seed is growing up. Okay, that's important. That'll have spiritual ramifications there. Okay, now we go on down to Jesus's interpretation here, and it says this, that Jesus left the crowds, right there, he left the crowds and went into the house. His disciples came with him, saying, explain to us the parable of the weeds of the field. All right, so there were a lot of other parables that Jesus gave in Matthew 13. You got the one that comes right in between Jesus telling this parable and then explaining the parable, and it's the one of the leaven. The kingdom of heaven is like leaven that a woman took and hid in 3 measures of flour till it was all leavened. Okay, well, this is just a one sentence parable. Okay, maybe a little bit more understandable that this kingdom that will be inserted into the world, yes, initially through Jesus, will eventually overcome the entirety of the world. Okay, that's a little easier to grasp, but we got a lot of different, like we pointed up here, we got this man, we have good seed, we have weeds and wheat, we have an enemy, and what is all of this? And so the disciples, they say, can you help us out, Jesus? Help explain this parable to us. And so he does. Jesus answered their request for an explanation by saying, here we go. Let me just highlight some things here. The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. And we've mentioned this before, but we'll just go ahead and make note of it, that this is Jesus's preferred title for himself. So this is the most used self-reference of Jesus. And I'm just going to highlight this because I'm going to say something about it in a minute here, that this is from the book of Daniel. Okay, that's a Daniel prophecy there, in which Daniel sees the Son of Man going to the right hand of the Ancient of Days. And so there's Jesus, who is sowing good seed. All right, Jesus sows good seed. Jesus does not sow bad seed. The field is the world. And the good seed is the sons of the kingdom. Okay, key word there. Sons of the kingdom. Okay. The weeds are the sons of the evil one. And the enemy who sowed them is the devil. Okay. And so we have sons of kingdom, and we have sons of the evil one. And then we have the devil just clearly calling him out there. Now the harvest that's referenced, the harvest is the end of the age. And the reapers are angels. Okay, let's go ahead and make just a quick comment here in that end of the age. And so just a quick comment here. Jesus is here in first Advent. So this refers to his second Advent. Okay. Easy enough, nothing extremely complicated about that. Now the reapers are the angels, and we would recall from our time in the book of Revelation, if you remember any of your sweet morning devotions with a nice cup of coffee and sunrise, and your time looking at all of the dreadful occurrences in the book of Revelation, which are often mediated by angels. Revelation details lots of angelic interactions in the end. Putting quotation marks there. Now, just as the weeds are gathered and burned with fire, so it will be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels. They will gather out of his kingdom. Okay, out of his kingdom, all causes of sin and all lawbreakers. So this is the Greek here could be rendered two different ways, in which one is that these are the same. So a description of the same sorts of people who are causers of sin and people who are lawbreakers simultaneously, or this could be two distinct reference in which the all causes of sin. Some people will say maybe this has something to do with just the way in which sin has just gotten into every aspect of creation. All of that will be removed and ultimately thrown into the lake of fire in the end. And then all lawbreakers being a little more of a clear general statement about all those who are not in his kingdom. And so they will be thrown into the fiery furnace. Now, when we say fiery furnace, what do you think of? Oh, yes, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And in Daniel 3. Okay. And in Daniel 3, it comes right after Daniel 2. I know this. I went to school a long time to be able to tell you that Daniel 3 came after Daniel 2. But what I want to emphasize is that that is the vision of the, we'll call him the metal man, which is the kingdoms to come. Okay. Now, the use of fiery furnace, is that a direct, clear reference to Daniel 3? Maybe, maybe not, but it's something that I'm going to cling on to here, because we talked about how Son of Man comes from Daniel, fiery furnace makes it, just at least sparks my brain to think about the fiery furnace. And one of the primary themes of the book of Daniel, from cover to cover, is the theme of kingdom. It's the theme of kingdom. And you have the worldly kingdoms juxtaposed against God's kingdom. And I think that is something that's really important for us to take note of here in this parable. Okay, so I want to go back and I want to start to let my brain kind of fly into a couple different maybe directions that I think is going to help me think about a biblical theology of the theme of kingdom from cover to cover, which I think this parable is alluding to. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. Kingdom in Bible, we'll say a flyover. We're not going to hit everything, of course. But where does kingdom originate? Genesis 1, 27 to, what is that, 28, 29, somewhere in there, in which Adam and Eve are rulers of creation. And they're intended to be the vice regents, as it were, of God. So when we think about image bearing, we say a lot of different things typically, in which we'll say that bearing God's image is because we have the capacity for love, or because we have the ability for knowledge and wisdom, or because we have spirit and the eternal component. And those are true things about humanity, but that's not the original purpose for the label of image bearers for Adam and Eve. The original purpose was that it's a designation about humanity, the ability for us to have a capacity for love or knowledge or eternity or things like that. Those are characteristics of what it means to be an image bearer. But an image bearer is who we are. It's an ontological reality of humanity. And so to bear God's image is to serve as his representative to the world. That's the original job description in kind of a broad sense, and so they've got additional responsibilities to do beyond that. Adam and Eve do, where they're to be fruitful and multiply and to tend to the garden, and so that it would be a place of worship. But this is the original design for kingdom, is that God's kingdom would exist in Eden and then flow forth from Eden to the ends of the earth. That was the job. Take the kingdom of God that is uniquely embodied in Eden and take it global. But we don't have to go long to get to Genesis chapter 3, and then kingdom will continue to progress until we get to and there's a whole lot more we could say. Boy, I'm cutting out a lot here, but I would go to Genesis 11 maybe next with the Tower of Babel. Now, I'm gonna actually go to that in my Bible software here. Okay, so I've got Genesis chapter 10 pulled up right here. Now remember, Ham is the son of Noah, who does something really egregious, and I'm not going to spend time talking about that, but let's just say that his line is not favorable coming from him now. So the sons of Ham, Cush, Egypt, Put, and Canaan, the sons of Cush, you have there, where's the one I'm looking for? Okay, verse 8, here we go. The Cush fathered Nimrod. He was the first on earth to be a mighty man. That's a Gibor in Hebrew, which is what the Nephilim in Genesis chapter 6 were called. They were called Giborim, the mighty men. And so he seems to be one of them. And they were not good. They were very evil, and the reason that the flood happened. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. Now verse 10, the beginning of his kingdom was what? Babel. Now, Hebrew word for Babel is the same Hebrew word for Babylon. So we will say Babylon in our English, and we'll say Babel in our English, but in the Hebrew it is the same word, Babel. And so Nimrod here is the founder of the kingdom of Babylon. Babylon is here in Genesis. It will show up as the empire that will destroy Jerusalem and the temple, and it is the empire that will be referenced in Revelation in chapter 17 and 18 in a thematic way. And so Babylon serves as this type of worldly kingdoms in opposition to God. Okay. Now there's more to Nimrod as well. Verse 11. From that he went on into Assyria and built Nineveh. Jonah didn't like Nineveh. Nineveh was the capital of Assyria, and Assyria is the nation that destroyed the northern kingdom of Israel. So Nimrod founded Babel and Assyria, and also notice that Babel is in the land of Shinar. Okay, right there. Now we get to the Tower of Babel, and we see that the Tower of Babel is really a tower in Babylon. And now this is early Babylon before it becomes the massive empire that we see in Daniel's story, but it's in the land of Shinar right there in verse 1. Now let's keep going down a little bit further. Here we have Terah's descendants, and you have Abraham, right? That comes from Terah, and they come from Ur of the Chaldeans, which is a region in Babylon. And so Abram is called out of Babylon. He's called out of this really awful worldly kingdom that serves other gods, and he's called to go start a new kingdom. And in the Abrahamic promise, and we see it in 12, 15, 17, and was it 21 or 21, where the Abrahamic covenant is talked about. We see just increasing. It'll be numerous. It will have land, and it will have kings and princes within. It will become a kingdom. Okay, now that kingdom was originally intended to be Israel, but Israel failed at its job description, and so they cannot step into God's desire for his people. And we know that there's a lot more to that story, and that's what the book of Hebrews is about. The intention was always that the kingdom would come through the Messiah in the new covenant under a Melchizedekian priesthood and all of those things. And so then we're going to look at Daniel, and we'll see Babylon continued, and then which Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon there, and I referenced chapter 2 of Daniel with Nebuchadnezzar's dream, in which the top part of this metal man figure is gold, represents Babylon, and then you go down, you have and you have Medo-Persia, and then you have Greece, and then you have Rome, and then you have some toes that are a little bit of iron and a little bit of brittle clay, but the rock of God's kingdom, as a matter of fact, let's just go there. It's just going to be better to just take a peek at it. So Daniel to, I don't know, somewhere in the middle there. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, and we're going to look down at verse 44 right here. And in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. It shall break in pieces all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it shall stand forever. Just as you saw that a stone was cut from a mountain by no human hand, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold. A great God has made known to the king what shall happen after this. And so you have this metal man that represents all the worldly kingdoms that are really worldly and sinful and terrible and not honoring to God in any way. But there will be this rock that will be taken from a mountain, and it will be cast into the metal man, and it will shatter the metal man, and that rock is God's kingdom. Okay, and so wow, that's really cool. And then we could also go to Revelation 17. Oh, that's more of a 2 than a 7. 17 and 18, and we will see the prostitute and Babylon, which refers to the fallen world system. All right. Now, in this, we know that Christ is bringing his kingdom. He is the rock that that will come into the kingdoms of the world and shatter them ultimately, and that's all the kingdom theme, that all that kingdom theme. We need to have it on our mind when Jesus says that the kingdom of heaven is like this. Okay, and so some observations, some more observations here. So we mentioned that it's not always readily visible which seed is growing up, but another observation for us is we live in a world where kingdoms are at war. And observation. As these kingdoms grow up as weeds and wheat, we should expect evil to grow, and usually we don't focus on this, good to grow as the gospel advances. And so we've got some observations made here just from this parable that I think are helpful for us. All of this is simply to frame us up with the world that we live in, to bring the spiritual realities that are present and active all around North Park Community Church and within North Park Community Church. We want to set them before us, because when we understand the spiritual realities that are going on around us, we remember why we exist. And that is of the most critical importance. And so when we remember why we exist here on this earth, why this church exists, what it exists for, why my life is here, why I wasn't raptured up at 17 when I professed Jesus, when I remember that, then I know what to do. And that's what we want. We want clarity. We want clarity behind what we're doing, because we know why we're here and what we're here for. That's what this vision series is about. This isn't sloganeering. This isn't marketing tactics, or I didn't just finish reading some leadership book or something like that. This is simply remembering who we are and why we're here. We are sons and daughters of the kingdom, which means that we have a king, and he has called us to do his bidding. So with all of that, I'm gonna just end up preaching my sermon here prematurely, and so let me just go ahead and wrap it up there. There's our text. There's some of the thoughts floating around in my head, and we're gonna have to mold this into the message, and I'm excited for that. So love you, church. Be praying for me, and be praying that the Lord would use this series to unify us in heart and mind as a local body of Christ, to connect the world around us to Jesus, the only one who can save. So with that, I love you.